Hey folks, Real Honesty with Jarmuthlin. I'm Jarmuthlin, and these are more of the worst characters slash gimmicks in WCW history. And I'm going to plug some YouTube and Twitter handles as I go on in these shows, because some of these are my picks, but generally now I'm leaving it up to people in the comments, and if I think that they're the worst ones, then I'll absolutely do it. Some have suggested ones that others suggested, so if I don't pick all of yours, don't take offense to it. I'm just not going to make repeats here. So anyway, here we go. Jamie Mitchell on YouTube, thanks again for saying this in. They sent these in a few days ago. The Yeti. And yeah, okay, so the Dungeon of Doom had this big iceberg and wanted to introduce this, monster that was going to take down Hulkamania. And it was a guy that was a mummy wrapped in what looked like shit-covered bandages. Right. What? I mean, you had the Giant and Hulk Hogan that were having a limp match at Halloween Havoc 1995, and then, of course, Tony Schiavone's one of the best calls that he had, just for pure silliness. Guy, the Mummy, played by Ron Reese, who was Reese in The Flock, by the way, for those of you historians. For those of you that even remember The Flock in WCW, he was the big, tall dude that Goldberg picked up at one point, right before he beat Raven for the U.S. Championship on April 20th, 1998. 20th or 21st, I think it was 20th. But anyway, yeah, it was the Yeti, and so this was a couple years before, and he comes down, and he apparently was wearing he had extra padding in his head to make himself look taller, and also apparently he had lifts. That's why he was walking so funny, like in his shoes. Even though the guy was legit 7 feet 7'1". And Giant's bear hugging Hogan, and then the Yeti comes and wraps his arms around Hogan's neck, Giant's neck, and it looks like they're dry humping Hogan. It was absolutely terrible. And then he became a super giant ninja, by the next pay-per-view, literally the next month. And then he turned into Ron Reese. It was ridiculous. The Yeti, it's wrestle crap at its best, but it's like a train wreck. You can't look away. Arachnaman. It was WCW ripping off Spider-Man, for fuck's sake. What the hell was this? It was just such absolute crap. My God, Arachnaman. The guy didn't have too many moments that I recall. Yes, a terrible gimmick, not very long run. PN News, Rapmaster PN News. When I was a kid, a fat white guy rapping for some reason appealed to me. I found the theme funny and cool and everything, and the guy couldn't work for shit. I'm sorry. The guy wasn't a terrible rapper. Considering how most white guys, especially in the 90s, were at rapping. But, God, Rapmaster PN News. Gary Michael Capetta, the world's most dangerous announcer, by the way, as JR would always call him. I like Gary Capetta. I thought Gary Michael Capetta was a great ring announcer and should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Even though he's only in WCW, hey, he had some pretty cool moments. But whatever. That would be way down the road, but I like Gary Michael Capetta. I like how he introduced Great Muta, Sting, Ric Flair. He had a lot of great introductions of talents. But anyway, Rapmaster PN News, just terrible gimmick. Just bad. What was this? It was early 90s wrestling at its best. Disco Inferno, while not a bad worker, he could have some serviceable matches and even some decent matches. The gimmick was crap. It was absolute crap, and it was a Saturday Night Fever gimmick with just shit. It was shit. It just was. And the guy thought he was a bigger star than he really was. And he wasn't. He certainly wasn't a terrible worker. And his booking ideas, good God, never let the guy near a booking meeting or let him be in charge of booking wrestlers, or he'll make them the worst ones ever. But yeah, Disco Inferno, the gimmick was just ridiculous. He did more in WCW than I thought anybody with that gimmick could have done, and maybe that was just his dedication to the gimmick itself. Glacier. They hyped this up for months, and then no vignettes. And then suddenly he was there in September of 96. And this is right with the realism of the NWO and people invading, and some more realistic characters with some goofiness, but still more realistic characters. And Glacier was who you wanted to bring out, Sub-Zero knockoff. And the guy was a good athlete for what he was. I mean, the kick was a little weird, the cryonic kick. The guy was a good athlete, like I said, but just no. I mean, just the gimmick was it was doomed to fail from the start. And after all that hype and everything, that months of hype fizzled out quickly. And the massive amount of production values they put to his entrance, the snow, which I'm sure was just shredded newspaper, it was bad. It was just really, really bad, and no wonder he was getting squashed very soon after, especially by 98. I think he was getting squashed by Goldberg on a few matches, and yeah, his gimmick never got over. No matter whether the guy was dedicated to it or not, I mean, and no matter how good of an athlete he was, dead in the water gimmick. Shockmaster. The man is going to shock the world. He is the Shockmaster, and he falls through. And Dusty Rhodes' idea of putting the former tugboat, Fred Ottman, in a stormtrooper helmet that was glitterized with a vest and pants, and he busted through the wall, and then there was a 2x4 put down there, and, well, Shockmaster tripped over it. And I'm not saying it was Dusty's fault. Apparently Davy Crockett had somebody nail a 2x4 there to put the wall back together, and Shockmaster tripped through, and helmet fell off. And if you watch it, it's on the Clash of the Champions in August of 93, right before Fall Brawl 93, and or just a few weeks before Fall Brawl 93. And my God, you can hear it because they had somebody doing the voiceover stuff. It was Ole Anderson voicing the Shockmaster, and Ole, who was not known for laughing much, was trying to not laugh uncontrollably as he voiced the Shockmaster. And my God, Sid trying not to laugh. Booker T, easy for me to say, trying not to laugh. Everybody trying not to laugh. My God, Shockmaster, that was just doomed. That was doomed even if that whole botch hadn't happened of him tripping and falling, the helmet falling off. Even if that hadn't happened, I mean, it was still gonna fail because the look was ridiculous. And I mean, he even got the victory for his team at Fall Brawl 93, but he was gone. He was back to being Typhoon, of the natural disasters, in WWE by 94. Because his WCW career floundered. I mean, imagine that. You trip and fall and your helmet falls off on live TV and you get kicked off that. Well, whatever. Anyway, at Big Bird 432 with the Dungeon of Doom. If I wanted to just lump the entire stable into it, yeah, I mean, I could. But yeah, I already talked about the Yeti, but let's see, you had the Master, or not, well, I mean, it was the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, who I never cared for. I never thought Kevin Sullivan was any kind of good worker. I thought he was shit in the ring. And his booking wasn't all that great. I mean, his booking wasn't horrible, but he just wasn't that good in the ring. I mean, maybe it was just because by the time he was in WCW, especially in the early to mid 90s, he was not good in the ring at all because of years in the business. But yeah, he wasn't that good. That was ridiculous with all his stuff and the devilish stuff. And you had the Master. I forget exactly what the fat guy's name was, the big fat guy that he talked to, who yelled Sullivan. I can't do the voice like he does. Maybe he was the Master, the Dark One, the Supreme Being, the fat slob. I don't know what the hell he was, but anyway, it was terrible. And then you had the Zodiac, who was, just stupid goddamn Brutus Beefcake. I mean, his gimmicks. I don't mean the guy himself. I don't know how stupid Brutus is, but God, he was crap. I mean, it doesn't matter what gimmick you put on him. He was Zodiac. I mean, just horrible. He acted weird and stupid. He had that face paint on there because no one wanted to look at his face. Yeah, I swear if he wasn't Hogan's buddy, he wouldn't have been in wrestling after this. And sometimes it is who you know. Bruce Beefcake doesn't strike me as a bad guy. His gimmicks are just shit. But they had Kamala in there, who was past his prime by that point in 95. They had the Shark. Well, Avalanche, the Shark. I mean, any gimmick you put on John Tenta, he was in there. You did have Ming. I mean, he was part of the Faces of Fear, but, he was in there, and I mean, and he was scary. Like, he was an intimidating son of a bitch, but the gimmicks I mentioned before were part of the reason why the Dungeon of Doom was ridiculous. And then also Lex Luger joined the Dungeon of Doom, which right there is one of the worst gimmicks of all, even though he was good at being an egotistical prick, because that was what he was. This was at the time, though, when Luger had his legs under him. Yeah, that was a cheap joke because I don't like Lex Luger. But yeah, the Dungeon of Doom was absolute just shit. So thank you, Big Bird 432 on Twitter for suggesting that. And now we move on to JJF tweets. The Hunchbacks. I mean, you put anybody with a hunchback gimmick on them, and I mean, I don't care what costumes, what talent you put in there. It is doomed to fail. It is doomed to fail. It was like the Ding Dongs. Not quite as bad because the Ding Dongs got more TV time, but yeah, the Hunchbacks, my God, just terrible. I had to do a little Google search actually to remind myself what the Hunchbacks were, and it was just terrible, absolutely terrible. Berlin and Dancing Alex Wright. Dancing Alex Wright because he was 18 years old when he got signed. Good athlete, really good athlete. Had a great match with Brian Pillman when I think he was 18, 19 at Great American Bash 1995. It was great because Pillman started to show more heel stuff. But yeah, you had Alex Wright doing the dancing stuff, and he was undefeated for a while, and then he started getting beat, and he got jobbed out pretty quickly. And then they did the Berlin thing where he was going to be more evil, and it was like, because he was German, so let's make him an evil German. And let's make him do, salutes that look kind of like German Nazi, it wasn't Nazi salutes, but just the implication of it. You're watching, you're like, what? I mean, this is terrible. Why in the world is this happening? Berlin was going to fail anyway because they cut the legs out from under him anyway, and watered down the gimmick. But yeah, Dancing Alex Wright was also silly, and Amnesiac Cactus Jack. He was lost in Cleveland, and Dusty doing the whole thing with making Cactus Jack this big baby face. That was a good idea. Making him an amnesiac was not a good idea. And it was a terrible idea. It was terrible. I mean, my God. The whole thing, and then it was this whole thing leading to a babyface run where he's going to come back face Vader at Halloween Havoc 93, which was a good match. But just getting there was just bad. It was just such shit. So anyway, I'm going to leave this off here. So do you guys agree? Do you disagree with what I've said so far? Like, share, comment, subscribe. Twitter link is in the description. Spend Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I am John Ritlin, and I will see you soon.